our YouTube page. And we're going to get started in just a second. So if you need interpretation, we have two languages today, and this is the very first very first webinar that we have two interpreters. Very excited to be able to say that we support not only our Spanish-speaking community members in Alvord, but now we have also the option for our Arabic speaking community members. So if you need this interpretation in Spanish, si necesita la interpretación en español, lo que necesito que hagan es busquen en las herramientas de Zoom una esfera que dice more o más o interpretation y cambia la información de inglés a español. If you need this information in Arabic, we have Naima here. Thank you, Naima, for interpreting. Please change the interpretation, or excuse me, the language from English into Russian. So we have now from, we'll be doing the presentation, Ms. Saliba, Ms. Calderon, and myself, all in English, but we also have interpretation now in Arabic and Spanish. So with that, it is now 5 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started with our presentation. So as you can see, we have the presentation today is called Understanding the ELPAC. And we have two of our instructional specialists, Ms. Kim Saliba and Ms. Carla Calderon. Thank you for being here, who are going to be leading this information, leading this session. But I always want to start off with just a note of thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time to learn about the processes and the exams that your child is going to have to go through. It might not seem like a lot to be here for an hour, 30 minutes, however long you spend, but over the entire kindergarten through 12th grade or TK or preschool through 12th grade, I mean, that's 13, 14 years of your child's education. All of that adds up. And there's so much research that says that the more involved you are in your child's life, the better they do in their education. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We can't do this work without you. Kimberly and Carla, you're up.
Thank you again, Dr. Cisneros, for inviting us to participate in tonight's webinar. To this particular topic that we're going to be covering today is the ELPAC. We're going to be looking at what the ELPAC is, who takes it, why is it important, and how we can help at home. And I am Kimberly Saliba. I am an instructional specialist here at the English Learner Support Services Office, and I will be presenting with my counterpart, Carla. Carla, would you like to introduce yourself?
I was already introduced, so hi, hello parents. Buenas tardes. I am Carla Calderon, another instructional specialist here in the English language department, and I am happy that you were all able to be here today to learn a little bit more about what ELPAC is and what it means for your students.
One of the reasons why, thank you, Carla. One of the reasons why we wanted to get this message out on when Dr. Cisneros asked us if we would participate today is because the ELPAC window, which I'm going to be talking more about as we go through the slides, but our ELPAC window for testing starts the first Monday in February. So it goes from February 3rd all the way to the last day of school. That's when it ends. So it is very important that we get this information out to you so that you can have an impact, help have an impact on the results for your particular child.
Okay. And just to clarify, so that's the window. Parents, however, the sites have chosen when they are administering the assessments. So some sites are getting started February 3rd. Some sites are starting in March. And so if you are involved with like your ELAC or any like coffee with the principals meetings at the sites, then that would be a good question for you to ask the admin or teachers, just so that you can get an idea of when and how much you have to be able to support your child at home.
Yeah, thank you for that. How do we go to the next slide? Oh, okay.
You just tell me, Miss Saliba,
Okay.
and I will advance the slides.
Okay. So what is the ELPAC? Okay, the ELPAC stands for English Language Proficiency Assessments of California. And there are two different kinds of tests for the ELPAC. One is the initial ELPAC and one is the summative. The initial ELPAC is used to determine if a student is an English learner upon entering a California school, and it allows for proper placement in English language development programs. Both the ELPAC initial and summative assesses four different domains of language, which is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Anything to add, Ms. Carla?
Just that the way that we determine who will take the initial is through the home language survey that parents, when either entering in kindergarten and registering your student, there is a language survey that parents complete, and depending on the answers to that. So if there's another language at home, then we invite the student to come take the initial, and then the test is what determines whether the student is an English learner or not. We have students who take the initial and they score IFEP, or initially fluent proficient, and that just means that the student, they speak another language at home, but they might also speak English, and they're proficient in English at that time. So that's very important to note that if the student is an English learner, then that is the assessment that determines that, and that is so that we can provide support, as Kimberly just noted.
Support and services, yes. Okay, who takes the ELPAC? So like I said, the initial ELPAC is for identification purposes. It identifies whether a student is an English learner and needs those supports and services in order to develop English language proficiency. Once a student has been identified as an English learner, then they will be taking the summative ELPAC at once a year. And the purpose of the summative ELPAC is to measure a student's progress in learning English, and to identify where they are on the English language proficiency range. The summative ELPAC is required for all EL students, except if they reclassify, which we're going to get into in the latter part of the presentation. But yes, all students who are ELs will take the summative ELPAC.
And then here, just to clarify, so the initial is for placement, and they only take that once in their school career, just one time, to identify their placement as an EL or as an IFEP student who's proficient. And then the summative, that's the one that they'll continue to take yearly to measure that progress. But the initial, just one time in their school career.
Yes, the initial is one time. But if some students, like say, for example, come in September and they take the initial, then they will take the summative when the window opens again in February. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So why is this ELPAC, why is this test so important?
So as we already kind of mentioned several times, that identifying of the student, because then this allows the school, the district, to provide additional support in learning English. So in our district, we have, our students who, our teachers have our have a special authorization, a special certificate that they received to teach students who are learning English as a second language, right? So we, as a state in California, we are required to provide designated ELD and integrated ELD. And so that is the support that these students will receive, so that when they are identified as English learners, we will ensure that they have those two supports. So
Miss Calderon and Miss Saliba, I do have a question
yes.
that has come up in my discussions with parents of English learners. Um, I've noted hesitation oftentimes of wanting to have their child reclassified because of what you just said. They said, you said that, when they are English learners, you provide additional support, but if they reclassify, do you take that support away? Is it negative, or are you going to get into that? Because I know that when I was a ELD teacher at Loma Vista Middle School, Go Loma Lions, that was a concern.
Because, yeah. We are going to talk about reclassification, but we'll head and cover it here since, it aligns. So yes, I've had that question in the past when I'm holding those meetings, because the reclassification requires for us to hold a meeting with the parent to inform them of the process. And that is the one thing that we explain to them, that they will no longer need designated or integrated ELD, right? And so the school is determining through different ways, and we'll get that into reclassification, but the student no longer needs that. It doesn't mean that if the student later on gets, a 2, let's say they're getting a 2 because they're needing extra support with comprehension, it doesn't mean they're not going to get support. This speaks to the support specifically to learning the language of English, right? Not necessarily English language arts, which is a totally different thing. The concepts that they're learning, if they need extra help, and if there's tutoring for supporting in math or science concepts, they can still get support. Of course, we're always going to support our students, but that removing the services in terms of the language acquisition piece of it. And I'll talk about it here because it aligns to your question, but I'll talk about it with reclass as well. When a student does reclassify and we remove those additional supports, we monitor them for 4 years, right? So we are checking twice a year at the district level that their grades, that they're doing well with their basic skills assessment. And then if they're not, then we have a process in place of how to support them at the school site.
Got it. Thank you.
Great question.
Yes, very good question. And yeah, like Carla said, we're going to be discussing more like the process of reclassification, and then the criteria and all of that through at the latter part of this presentation. And then also when we are talking about reclassification, it's a great thing. It's an absolute great thing, and we like to celebrate that. So I know that there might have, like you said, Dr. Cisneros, that there's some hesitation, like, oh, you're taking something away, but we're taking away things that they don't
no longer need.
Yeah.
And that's why the determination of reclassification, they're meeting the criteria, is coming up. And so can you go back? Sorry, I wasn't done with that slide. Yeah, sorry. Because that's going to tie with what you're saying. So the scores allow schools to provide appropriate instruction, right? So there are 4 levels, and I don't think we talked about that. There are 4 levels in the ELPAC, right? And so you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. The ones are going to be your emerging students, right? The ones that are just starting to learn the language. 2s are still kind of like in the beginning process, maybe been here 2 or 3 years. 3 is normally the one where we see the bulk of the students, maybe 3 to 5 years, they might be in there. And then 4, that's when they're really meeting that proficiency. And so depending on the scores that they get, our teachers do look at those scores at the beginning of the year to provide those scaffolds, to provide those supports, to put them in a group with students who are at their level for that designated ELD portion of the day. So it's important to continue, and obviously in the classroom, the teachers continue to assess and monitor, but this is one of those measures that help us. And then we use that for reclassification purpose. Okay, let me go to the next one now.
Before we go to the next one, we received
Yeah.
we received a question from Daisy. I'll read it out, and then Ms. Saliba or Ms. Calderon, I'll defer to you all and who's going to answer it. How many times a week do the students receive support, and for how long?
So designated ELD is considered core for our English language learners. So it's like a math or science, right? They get it daily, every single day. At the elementary level, it's about 30 minutes daily. And then at the secondary level, we have specific classes. So we have ELD1, ELD2, ELD3, and they're what, about 50 minutes, Kimberly? 48 minutes, 50 minutes?
In their English language arts class.
In secondary?
In secondary, yes.
About 50 minutes?
Oh, 15.
No, 50. I'm talking about ELD1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, they're about an hour long.
Okay. So one period, right? If they're within 1 to 3 years, they have a specific course that they take, is one class. And then those who have been here longer than 3 years, they get 15 minutes in their English language arts class for designated ELD.
Designated. And then are you going there? They also get integrated ELD throughout the day.
Throughout the day.
Yeah.
So at the elementary is all day, those scaffolds, whatever support, whatever, you know, the teacher might pull a small group and things like that. And then in secondary.
And the integrated ELD is just basically giving students access to the content. Teachers are using strategies and skills such as graphic organizers, realia pictures, and then like Carla said, you know, specifically pulling groups to, you know, go over vocabulary, front load the vocabulary with students. So teachers are pulling all of these strategies to help the students gain access to the core curriculum. Does that answer your question, Miss Daisy?
She said thank you. So, oh, there you go. Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
So, to acquire a language at an academic level, it generally takes about 5 to 7 years. And this is all based in language acquisition research. So our students, you know, we have students who, you know, are 4 years that might get reclassified, right? We have others that might take a little longer, but average usually 5 to 7 years, right? Those students who come to us with a very strong foundation in their native language, let's say they come in high school, but you know they were in their home country, they were in school and they were really good in school, and they just have great foundation in their native language. Is usually a lot faster for them to transfer those skills into English. And then we have students who might, you know, have trouble in their native language. Maybe they have some years where they didn't attend school or what have you. Then they might take a little bit longer to acquire English because they don't have a strong foundation in their native language. So we always tell parents to please continue to, if you speak another language at home, please continue to speak to your children in your native language at home, because that is going to strengthen everything they learn in that first language. They're able to transfer that to English. So please continue. And you're going to end up with a bilingual child, right? If you continue to support the native language at home. Many times parents will tell me, well, I want them to learn English. So I don't want to speak Spanish to them or Vietnamese anymore or Chinese or Arabic, right? Because I want them to learn English. But it will transfer that knowledge. You can read with them in your native language, have conversations, have them write. You know, you can support, especially if you don't speak English, right? You can still support your child by speaking to them, asking them questions, you know, reading with them in your native language. So that is something that you can continue to do, and it will transfer to the new language. And then
really quick, Carla, if you guys were present for our previous FACE meeting in November, we talked a lot about this, about how to maintain bilingualism at home. So yes, our department is a big proponent of maintaining that primary language and having bilingual children. And then also Carla and I did a presentation earlier this year at one of our other opportunities that Dr. Cisneros offered to us. And we did a whole presentation on that. And Dr. Cisneros, I'm sure, has that presentation that he can share with you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the benefits of bilingualism.
Bilingualism is a superpower.
Yeah, it is. Being bilingual is a superpower.
That's right.
So, you know, that constant exposure to the new language, and that's why at school they have various ways for them to practice. You know, they speak to their partners, their groups. They write, they read, they use sentence frames. So that consistent exposure to the new language is going to help them, but that strengthening of their native language is just as important. So please keep doing that at home if you have a second language at home, or your native language or primary language. This is just a map of the expected progress. Again, right? It's each child will have their own language learning journey, but just overall, this is what we tend to see. So that first year, our students will, you know, be in ELPAC level 1, right? As a newcomer, new to the language. And then if they have to, let's say they come in 4th grade and they have to take the state test, right? They'll take the test in ELA and they'll take it in math. Usually, the first year, they can be exempt from the language arts. But let's say they'll take the math, and if they're in 5th grade, they'll take science, right? So we don't expect students to meet it. They take it because we want to get a baseline, right? And so students will probably not meet the standards, and that's okay because they are learning the language, okay? So then you move on, and then 2nd year, they might still not be meeting it. 3rd year, it all depends, right? On the student, their native language, how much they apply what they're learning, and how much they, you know, they are motivated to do well in school. So we might have some that meet it and some that don't meet it. Okay. By the 4th year, we're wanting to get the students to be at the, I will touch on that in just a minute. I saw a question popping up.
Yes.
We will definitely talk about that. By 4th, you know, their 4th year, they might meet it, might be nearly meeting the standard, but not quite there yet. But, you know, by the 5th year, we're hoping the students have developed their English enough to be able to meet or exceed the standards. Again, not all the students are going to fall under that, right? The students are not placed in a box. This is just in general. And then by the 6th year, we're hoping that they get reclassified. And then right here, it shows how we monitor. Once they're reclassified, we monitor for 4 years. And the goal is that they are meeting or exceeding the standards at that point, because their language, English language skills are on par with native English speakers. You can advance this slide, please. here we go. So I'm going to talk about the reclassification here for Miss Ana Vara Lopez. All right. So the state.
One second, Miss Carla.
¿Qué pasó?
I have a question. Both you and Dr. Cisneros have are products of our school district, and both of you guys were identified as English learners. Can you tell the parents a little bit about your journey through our school system and how long it took you to reclassify? Mm-hmm.
Would you like to
Carla,
go first?
I'll defer to you. You can go first, Carla.
You want me to go first? All right.
Sure.
So I started school at McCullough when I was in 6th grade. So I went to school in Mexico from kinder to 5th grade. And then I started school for the first time in the United States in 6th grade. Back then, they did not have ELPAC, right? But obviously, my mom went to the site and told them, you know, she doesn't speak English. She's going to need some help. I didn't get any help. We didn't have a very good experience actually because I was born in California. And back then, this is true story, so I'm just going to share it. Back then, the school told my mom she was born in California. She should know English. She's not going to get any help. That was what we got at the school. Thankfully, my teacher, Mrs. Ringdahl, spoke Spanish, like fluent. She took she did, you know, one of those year in I think it was either Ecuador or I think it was Ecuador. So she did like a college abroad and she learned Spanish. So she allowed me to do a lot of the work to show my knowledge of concepts in Spanish. So I did a lot of my work in Spanish in 6th grade. 7th grade, I had EL classes, ELS classes that were called back then. So we were kind of group, right, in with Miss Orchard, and we had she didn't speak Spanish, but we were receiving those supports, I guess, right? Those scaffolds and that type of thing. So 7th grade. By the end of my 7th grade year, the teachers decided that I spoke English at a proficient level to get out of those ESL classes and start my 8th grade in a regular mainstream class. So they reclassified me at the end of 7th grade. So going into my 8th grade year, I was reclassified and started. And I had success in school. I was a straight A student, you know, fairly.
And look at you now.
That's what I mean. Like the journey for every student will be very different,
Yeah.
right? We have some students who will do it. I had a very strong foundation in my native language, which is Spanish. And so I was able to transfer. And even though like I feel like most of my 6th grade was also in Spanish because I did all my work in Spanish. So, and we have students who will take, you know, 7 years and some will take 5. So
Yeah.
that's my story.
What about you, Dr. Cisneros?
Well, I was actually going to ask that in the interest of time, I'll just give an abbreviated journey. I was born in Mexico, and I lived there until I was 3 years old. And so when I started school, I started preschool here in Riverside, and then elementary in Riverside. And I remember getting, I don't know if it was like an initial sort of test, um, but it was so delayed. It was like in middle school or high school after I'd already done all of my schooling in the United States. I remember being a little bit offended by it because I was a student who received good grades. And I've always really enjoyed school. And I remember they sat me down in someone's office and they played a track and they had me just follow really basic instructions. I remember it was along the lines of like draw a square, like put a circle outside of the square, and it was really, really, really basic for me. But I know that there are students who are coming from fresh from out of the country and don't have any foundation. So I really appreciate, Carla, that you said that you had a strong foundation in your native language in Spanish. And so to pass that message on to our parents here, I know you already did, but just to reiterate, keep your native language, both reading and writing and speaking and all of that. So I can't tell you when I reclassified, if I reclassified. I just went to school and I did all the tests. So if they reclassified me, I don't know. But I'm sure that when my parents enrolled me in school initially, they wrote that I was a Spanish speaker because that's all we spoke at home. Thank you for allowing me to share that.
And then you were saying something about, there was something that else you wanted to do
Something
about
else.
putting it in the chat for the parents, like any of the, okay.
Are you talking to me or are you talking to
I
Cisneros?
was talking to Dr. Cisneros. I thought
Okay.
he before he got into his story, I thought he said he wanted to put a question out there to the parents.
No, no, no.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So
Right.
back to reclassification,
Mhm.
right? So again, I wanna obviously to everyone, but Ana Vara Lopez, the state sets the criteria for reclassifying students. Okay, so the state gives us these 4 components, which is English proficiency assessment. I'm using my cursor to point to it. I'm not the one. English proficiency assessment, student performance on an assessment of basic skills, a teacher evaluation, and then the parent opinion and consultation. And then they gave us some choices within that. And then the district decides on the final criteria, right? But we have to follow what the state sets forth for the criteria. So for our district, the English proficiency assessment score, actually, this one is not our district. That one is the state.
That's
they
a
have
state
to
mandate.
have
Yes.
a score on the standard LPAC in order to even start considering reclassification. So it's 4 for the standard or 3 for an alternate LPAC. And the alternate is usually students with an IEP for special education. They just need a 3 in the alternate assessment. Okay, so that's it. That's across the state, a 4 or a 3. And then the basic skills, that is dependent upon what the districts have. Different districts use different measures, right? For our district, we use Peli for kinder students. Acadians, it's just a reading assessment, okay? They're just the names of the assessments. And then STAR. So these are all measuring how they're doing in reading in English, okay? We can also use the state assessment in English language arts, which is the CAASPP CASP. That is the state assessments the student takes starting in 3rd and up, and then up to 8th. The 9th graders take CAS?
No, 8th grade and then 11th grade.
And then 11th.
And then 11th. So we may use that as a measure as well. Okay. And then in our district, we have dual language immersion. And so we use the assessment is called DIBELS 8, but it is a reading assessment for English language arts. Okay. So we have several assessments that we use. Okay. The STAR, Acadians, Peli, and then CAS. Now,
and then on the CAS ELA, they have to score at a met or
exceeded. You remember that chart we were showing you that met or exceeded? And then the other ones, we have specifics. So like met, benchmark, which is a 3. STAR is the 40th percentile. And then for the students with an IEP, they have to meet they take the SANDY, another assessment, that measures reading, and they have to score a level 3. I know that's all confusing, but it's an assessment of their reading, how they're reading in English. Okay, and then we look at the scores and decide that. Teacher evaluation. So that is through a grade. Students in elementary need to get a 3 or higher. Students in secondary need to get a C- or better
In their English class.
in their ELA, English Language Arts class. And if they don't meet the grade, there's another piece, because we know, especially for students in secondary, sometimes it's not they don't know the language or they don't have the skills. There might be other factors, right? Like attendance, maybe they're not going, maybe just they're not doing their work, they're not turning it in, but they have the skills. But we know that there's other things going on. So then we have another opportunity and we do a teacher evaluation. So we basically send a form to the teacher saying, okay, so this student is failing the class. However, how does he or she do in these areas? And so they give us their opinion as to how their skills are. And then we meet with the parent. Now let me see. So in terms of who decides when the kids have to reclassify, the state sets the criteria. We look at all of the scores. We only look, like right now we have 196 students who have a 4. We already reclassified a whole bunch of students, 300 and something. I don't have the exact number, but at the beginning of the year, we had 1 reclassification. We reclassified a lot of students. Right now we have 196 left who have a 4.
Wow.
If you don't have a 4, there's nothing we can do. The state will not allow us to do anything with it. So
Or 3 on the alternate LPAC.
yes, or 3 on the alternate. Always leave that one out.
Or 3 on the alternate LPAC.
196 that we're working to see, have they met the basic skills? Did they get the grade or did they get a teacher evaluation?
That's fantastic. 196 students are potentially ready to reclassify. So, so just if I may just summarize it for our community members here. So these are the 4 ways, and to answer Ms. Barada Lopez's question, or Ms. Barada Lopez's question, excuse me, there's 4 ways, 4 requirements to reclassify. It is showing proficiency on an assessment. It's on the showing English language proficiency on the ELPAC. It's your performance on basic skills in English. It's the teacher evaluation. And then also, we don't do any work in Alvord really without our parents. So it's in consultation with you. So Anna, who decides? It's the group, and making sure that the student is ready to then reclassify. If I may, Ms. Saliba and Ms. Calderon, we have a question that came in from Mr. Dylan Gutierrez. I'd like to read it, and maybe you can answer it. So, what is the highest score, highest points available on the test? I'm assuming it's the LPAC. And what happens if they don't pass the exam? My child is in the 4th grade, and he's just now learning English.
So I think he's referring to the 4. So we have the highest is 4. If they're a general education student. The highest is a 3 if they have an IEP and they take the alternate. Not all special education students take the alternate.
It's determined through the IEP
EP
and
process.
the IEP team.
Okay. And y recién está aprendiendo el inglés. So he is new to the language, I'm assuming. So he most likely will not score a 4, and that's okay. He's gonna take it again next year. And what we look for and we hope for is progress, right? He's not gonna go from scoring a 1 to a 4. There is also, so parents usually see 1, 2, 3, or 4. There are what are called scale score ranges, and those go from 1,150 to like 1,800, right? And so we have like a scale that we look at carefully, and as long as we're seeing the student making progress within those ranges, then we're good. If Mr. Gutierrez's student is in 7th grade and he's still scoring a 1, that's when we start worrying, and that's when we want to have a conference with the teacher, right, to discuss.
Would we
hopefully
be,
before seventh grade, but you know what I mean? We can
yeah,
continue, as long as we're seeing progress, then it's okay.
yeah.
They'll get there eventually to the four.
Could we address the last part of his question? What happens if a child does not pass the exam? What happens if they don't reclassify?
Ever? Like, I'm not, they might not reclassify this year or next year or next year or next year, right? So I'm just gonna go with what happens if they get to 12th grade and they don't reclassify, right? For whatever reason. There, as we said, there are many reasons. So reclassification is a K-12 system. A student can move on to college if they weren't reclassified. Our concern is whether the student has the skills, the English proficiency to then be successful out in the real world, right? Whether it be college or it be a different career path, or just the workforce. We want to ensure that our students have the proficiency. And we do have students who leave us not reclassified for whatever reason.
Mhm.
It's not always that they don't have the skills. There are other factors involved. But so
Can I?
it's not going to keep them from going to college, to a
Yeah.
university. I think that's the one that parents usually tend to worry about.
Yeah. I think as a middle school teacher, myself, I taught the English language development course and the English language development lab. So I saw the newcomer students for 2 hours. I think it's important to note for our parents that if a child is in secondary, so middle school or high school, and they have not reclassified, then they run the risk of not being able to have an elective because the period that they would generally have art class or band or sports or whatever all the fantastic electives are that we have throughout all of our middle schools and high schools, your child, if they're not reclassifying and they need that extra support that Ms. Calderon and Ms. Saliba spoke about at the beginning of the session, um, they are going to be placed in a class to give them that extra boost so that they can learn the English language. So that if you have a strong foundation of English, you're able to perform in science and in math and in all your other classes. That's why there's so much emphasis placed on this process. But the downside to the child is that they take that period that should be going or could be going to an elective, and it is now a designated English language development course. So that is
Yes.
key, and I think a lot of our students don't know that. A lot of our parents don't know that. That's why it's very important that parents, your task, I was a teacher, so I'm gonna give you homework now, parents, to go talk to your children who are just now going to be taking the ELPAC for this
Coming up.
upcoming session, this in about a month or so. Let them know to really do their best, try their hardest. I know a lot of times students get testing fatigue. They're just tired of doing another test at the end of the school year, and so they might just kind of not focus as much as they should. But we want students to do well on all tests and to really try hard on all tests. But I think especially if they know, oh my gosh, if I don't reclassify and they have the ability to reclassify, they will lose out on having that elective. Let them know that, and our hope is that they really do excel.
Students who have been here since kindergarten, um, they take this test every year, right? So if they don't get reclassified in elementary school, by the time they get to middle school, it's like, I've been taking this test since I was in kindergarten and I know English fine. I don't know why I keep taking this test. And so they don't take it seriously. So we are encouraging, parents and teachers to really have conversations with our students, especially those who are doing well in their classes. And we know they have the skills to pass the test. Sometimes it's just knowing the format of the test, right? Because even though they take it every year, if they're not, we're going to give you some, examples of like the practice test. If they haven't seen it in a full year, right? And they're just seeing it for the first time when they're actually taking the test. then that can play a role in them not doing well as well. So yeah, it's very important to have those conversations. We've been talking to teachers a lot to just have those conversations with students, and you taking it serious, because then that'll impact, if you're going to have an intervention class or an AALD class, which is Advanced Academic English Language Development, that if you have been here for longer than 6 years and you are considered a long-term English learner, you might get that class, and that becomes your elective. So, yeah, maybe talking to them in that way, it can, we're trying so many different ways to encourage our students to show what they know, because we know that they know a lot, right? So, okay, moving on.
So that leads to how can we help at home? How can we help outside of the classroom? And like Dr. Cisneros was saying, talk to your children about the importance of doing their best. Give your children the opportunity to see what the test looks like before they actually take the test. And then we have here 2 different links that will get you to examples of the practice tests for the ELPAC. And then this first link right here gives you, it's just a wealth of information on how to read the ELPAC reports, and gives you other links to other information in regarding understanding the ELPAC and what it assesses, gives you more in-depth information than what we touched upon here today. Dr. Cisneros, is it possible for you to click on the second link, on the second blue link there?
Yes.
Okay.
And let me also put this link into the chat so that our families can access it if they need. Okay. I'm ready, Miss Oliva.
All right. So then you're going to scroll down a little bit. It's the practice and training tests for students. This is where they have tests that your student can take, and we'll just walk you through this on how to get your student access to those tests. You're just going to click sign in.
And this is mirroring what the students will see when they actually take the real assessment. So all of these pages look very similar to them.
Mm-hmm. And select a grade. They're all there.
So let's do what Mr. Gutierrez was talking about. He has a 4th grader.
4th grader.
All right. And if you scroll down, they're going to give you all of the assessments. So you need to look for the ELPAC practice test.
Oh, there it is.
There we go.
Pink
It's
color.
English language proficiency assessment.
Got it. The practice test or the training test?
The practice test.
Got it. Okay.
And there are 4 different tests for the 4 different domains of language that the assessment features. So if you want to click on the writing.
Writing, got it. Writing right here. Okay.
And then click select.
Select.
And play.
And
there's another one. You got to scroll down. There's another blue one.
There's another.
Scroll that down. Yeah.
Oh,
and then
I can't play the sound. Got it. Now it's beginning the test.
And so if you click on the play button, this is giving you the directions, and it gives the
Welcome to the writing section of the ELPAC test. Make sure your desk is clear of all books, backpacks, cell phones.
So that would be what the student would hear?
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to you have to go all the way. You have to toggle all the way to the
button.
Oh, I can't.
Before you can press next. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Next.
And then, so this is what an example of a writing task that a student in 4th grade might encounter on the ELPAC assessment. It gives them the opportunity to listen to the directions. And so if you press play, over there.
Imagine that you and a partner are going to describe a picture. Your partner has started writing a paragraph about the picture. The paragraph may contain errors. Read your partner's paragraph and then follow the directions for answering the 2 questions.
Okay, and then it gives, so not only is it writing, but it's assessing their ability to read the prompt and the paragraph. So then the students are responsible for reading that paragraph right there and answering the following question on the other side of the page.
So you see
Now,
all the buttons that you were navigating, like the bar on the side that you're moving up and down, like students need to be familiar with this. And we know that our students are technology savvy, right? But it's still like, this is a lot. These are 2 screens, you know, you're gonna type over here. There's a next, there's a save, there's a pause button, there's a notes, there's a zoom in, zoom out. It's like, there's all these things. And so again, if they're not exposed to it ahead of time,
This can distract from
actually doing the work of what we want.
Yeah.
so here, the example would be they read the paragraph, the sentence has 2 errors, and in the box here, they would have to rewrite it. So the sentence, a boy point from the map, they would have to figure out where the errors are and correct it.
So that
And
would
I
be the
noticed that
boy
there's
points to the map.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, so
here,
the 2 errors would be from point to points and not from, but to.
I got it. Okay, and then here, this is the second part of the question, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so we click once we correct it. So boy points to the map, click 2, and in the box, write a new sentence. So what would they do next? And so this is up to interpretation. Would you, Miss Salima and Miss Calderon, tell us, so when they type in the answer here, who grades that? Who sees those?
Those go to they automatically get submitted, and then they have a team of, what do we call them?
Like proctors?
Calibrated readers. So they,
So
it's the state of California?
Training.
California, yeah, it's the state of California.
So it's not us that grades it, it's the state of California.
No, it's
Right.
the state of California.
And they have like, they might be some of us, because you can, you know, apply for that and go through the calibration process and become one of those graders. I received emails from the state, like when they're recruiting people, right? So it might be, but you have to go through a very, a training process to be able.
It's very intense training process.
Would this suffice? What would they do next? They go to recess? I don't know, they could be done with the lesson and then head out. I don't know. That's just where my mind goes. But it would be up to the child to then write. They imagine what the children would do next. Your child would write in the correct sentence, and then they're going to be assessed on, since this is the writing test, on their writing abilities. So parents, I put that link into the chat. So please, what we would like you to do is to maybe just do a couple of practice questions with your child, you know, on the grades that they are in. This happens to be a 4th grade exam. That way they know what they're going to be kind of facing.
The listening piece, I recommend that if they're going to log on and do any of them, the writing and the listening piece one is very important, because the listening one, they only hear it once. And it's usually like something about a science or history, usually science. And then they have to answer questions about what they heard, right? And they can't replay it. And so that is more of like a training on how to listen and maybe take note.
Beautiful. Well, we have just about 6 more minutes in tonight's presentation. I do see somebody said, thank you so much, great information. And it has been really good information. Thank you. I'd like to maybe open it up to our parents now to see if you have any additional questions something that that's on your mind that maybe Miss Calderon or Miss Saliba didn't get to yet, you can please turn on your microphone or you can type it into the chat. Do we have any additional questions?
I only want to say to thank you so much. It's a really, really good information that we don't know, and now I have like a really good idea how to help my daughter.
Beautiful. Thank you
That's
so much.
awesome.
Glad you're here.
What grade is your daughter in?
10.
Ooh,
10th grade, yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah,
Yes.
it'd be very important for her to
yes.
reclassify.
It is, yes, and she's taking classes in Spanish, so she's a little bit confused right now, and I try to help her the most I can. But all that information that I get today is I think it's gonna help us a lot. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Is she in the DLI program?
I think so, right?
Is she at La Sierra?
No, she is in Hillcrest.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
she's just taking Spanish classes as well. Okay,
Correct.
that's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
I do have a question now that this mom has shared, her 10th grader. It prompted me to think of the seal of biliteracy. If a child reclassifies, do they qualify for the seal of biliteracy?
They are there are requirements for the seal of biliteracy. There are many different avenues so not just getting reclassified, you would have to like take 4 years of Spanish, take the
Got
AP
it, okay.
exam. So there's a lot of requirements, but being reclassified is part of.
Is part of that? Oh,
Yes.
beautiful. So for our parents who maybe you're listening and you're like, what is that? What is he talking about? The seal of biliteracy is an actual seal that can be placed on your child's graduation diploma, high school diploma. Miss Saliba, I know you support secondary, right? So please correct anything that I'm saying that's incorrect. So it's a seal, and it shows that they not only were reclassified, so as Ms. Calderon said, it's part of it. This is one of the requirements, but it also shows that they are literate in English and also in a different language, which in this case happens to be Spanish, but it doesn't always have to be Spanish. And then they can then put that onto their college application, onto a resume. It's a really high bar. It's a really excellent kind of like a feather in your hat that you can put on and say, not only am I bilingual, but I'm also biliterate, and that includes reading, writing, speaking, all of that. So, Ms. Calderon, you just told me something I didn't know, that reclassifying is one of the requirements. So thank you for that.
Because they have to show proficiency in English and then the other language, right? Right.
Beautiful.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Oh,
Go
yes.
ahead. Hi, Anna.
I'm Anna Barra Lopez again.
Hi.
Going back to the testing scores for the ELPAC. I know that there's 4 different sections, like you mentioned, reading, writing, listening, and there's one more. So they all have different scores. I know that I've seen the testing on the parent square, the scores. So, and then overall, they at the end, they do again one score. They only base so they do like an average score. Is that what it is?
Yeah, they have a calculation that they use. So the domains that you just mentioned, those 4 domains have 3 levels. And so your student will individually score at a certain level there, right? Then you combine listening and speaking and reading and writing, and those produce another numerical score. And then those 2 get averaged out, and then they give you the final score. I know there's a total of 7 scores.
Okay.
Yeah, but they do the state does a calculation, and we look at the overall score that is given to us by the state, when they do
Okay, so how do I know which section does she have to focus more when
Good
she's going to be
question.
testing? Like, I know that she has like a good, I think she has like a 4 for listening, but what I took from my scores or from my daughter's course is that she needs to focus on writing and reading.
Reading and writing, they're usually
Yeah.
the ones that,
So I think that's what I understood from the scores, but because I think she has a 4 on listening and a 4 on the other one, but writing in English, writing and reading, she has like it says 3 or out of 4. So
What a good question.
is that how it is? I need to focus on the one that has no, like, not a number 4?
Yes. Focus on the one that she needs the most support in. Yeah. So the lowest score that you see, focus on that. I mean, we're not going to ignore the other, but yeah, encourage her to do a lot more practice with the writing piece then. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you go, Anna, into what grade is your daughter in, Anna?
She's in 4th grade.
4th grade. Okay. So when you go into the 4th grade ELPAC practice test, let's go back to it again here. So you would look at her score and you would find whatever her lowest score has been, and maybe just do a couple of these practice questions. I think that would be a good way to kind of help boosting her up. And then Miss Saliba and Miss Calderon, Anna raises a really important topic, is parents knowing where their scores even are. How can parents get a copy of their scores?
So the scores were sent out in August, and they should have received a paper copy. And then if you go back to the presentation,
Okay.
and you click on the LPAC, the other,
This one.
yeah, and you scroll down. This right here, this part right here will give you information on how to read and interpret the report that was sent to you. Now, if you don't happen to have that report handy, it is also available on Aries.
On Aries. Beautiful.
Yeah, so you can, but here, right here, let's, if you don't mind clicking on the summative LPAC, this gives you an explanation on the different performance areas here.
Okay, so parents, it looks like you have a lot of resources that Ms. Calderon and Ms. Saliba has provided. And if you walk away from this presentation, you're thinking, I maybe just need a little bit more time, please feel free to send us an email, give us a phone call. We can facilitate dialogues, offline and off this conversation, because right now we have already kept you 2 minutes after time. So I wanted to just say thank you so much to Ms. Calderon and to Ms. Saliba for such a dynamic presentation that is very, very, very helpful to all of our families. And that comes from them, not just me, but I also think it's very helpful. I also want to just give a shout out and a thank you to Pati Alvide, our interpreter in Spanish, and Ms. Naima. We are so excited that you're here, who is now being able to offer support for our Arabic speaking community members. So parents, if you missed any portion of this webinar is already posted onto the Albert YouTube page. So just look up Albert Unified School District and you will see this entire presentation. And then I'll also be sending out the slides via Parent Square. All right, everybody, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Good night.
You.
Bye.
Good night.